Okay,
So yeah,
thanks.
feel free. I mean, I'll just sort of ramble on, but if you just unmute yourself and want to ask a question at any point during the presentation, that works just fine by me. Or you can wait till the end, or throw something up in the chat, and we can address it at the end too. So here we go. So back in March, right when COVID broke out, the NfU embarked on a farm labor project. As you probably are aware, most of the farm research on farm labor shortages has really been tailored to large corporate agribusinesses, but in the NfU, we do things differently. So through consultation research, surveys of farmers and their workers, and stakeholder engagement, this study focuses on the labor needs of and policy solutions for small and medium-sized sustainable farms. We've been able to get over 600 farm operators and over 100 farm workers to participate in either the surveys, individual interviews, and/or workshops. And today I'm going to focus mostly on the data specific to Local 301, covering Haldimand, Norfolk, and South Oxford. So 25 farm operators responded from your local, or 40% of farm operators, 40% of those employed workers in 2020. Now the farms without staff, 93% declared they're self-sufficient. They were very proud of this and have no need for workers. But 7% said that, you know, they struggled. They really want to find workers and they can't, and they would really like to hire in the future. So while you probably have, if you extrapolate the numbers, 40% of your members employing workers, there are more there that are hoping to expand or scale up their projects. So today I'm going to go through several slides that offer insight into the demographics of your local before delving into some of the findings pertinent to labor. So again, this I don't know if you've ever broken down your local by farm type, but this gives you a bit of a sense here of the 26 respondents here, predominantly oilseed and grain farming. Was second by cattle and dairy. We didn't separate cattle and dairy, and we really ought to have. We're working right now with the NfU nationally to try to figure out ways of better understanding the entire membership based on farm type. So hopefully we'll have better data for you moving forward. But there you can see, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these slides, but if you want me to go back to them, I'm happy to. Again, here's another breakdown by farm size. Yeah, clearly we are the union for small farms. Again, if you come and visit and join us at the NfU Ontario AGM on the, what date is it here? Friday the 26th of February at 11:30 a.m. I'll present more on the entire provincial findings, and you'll be able to compare and see a little bit based on these slides what you compare like to the rest of the province. And breaking down by sales model too, of the members that responded from Local 301. You can see commodity scales outpaces all others, but on-farm sales, and what we've definitely noticed is online delivery to consumer across the province has exploded this year compared to previous years. There's definitely a lot of people moving to that form of sales. While we've seen a significant decline, obviously with COVID, of direct-to-restaurant sales. A number of our members have struggled if they had pretty much solely a direct-to-restaurant model. Farm operators by age. You're in the older membership category. The provincial average is 55% of our membership is over 55. You're closer to the 81% range, at least according to the members that completed the survey. By gender, we're closer to parity province-wide, but again, those farm operators, you're looking at 62% male, 38% female. All right, so now we're going to get into the labor stuff a bit here. So 40% of farm operators in Local 301 employed workers, at least those who responded to in the survey. So those 11 farms employed 53 staff in 2020. That's a little higher than the average across the province. It seems like of the farms that employ workers, it's generally 3 workers on average. You're higher up there. You're 4 or more. The other interesting thing, and probably is no surprise to you, is you have very few paid interns at 7%, but you have 36% of your workforce were temporary farm workers or people through the seasonal agricultural worker program. Provincially wide, the amount of temporary farm workers is less than 10% on NfU farms. So you definitely have a larger percentage of temporary farm workers. It's also was kind of surprising to me looking at these stats and pulling them together today. Generally the average has been about 30% of operational costs are on staffing across the province, but according to your survey respondents, you were closer to 20%. And I'm interested to know if you guys have thoughts on why that might be. The other thing of note on this slide that I think is important, you definitely in your local have more of an issue retaining workers for more than one season than you have with actual labor shortages. Many said they never had labor shortages on their farm and were always able to meet their labor demands. Again, it'd be interesting to get your feedback at the end of this presentation on why that might be the case. As someone mentioned COVID-19 and how it was affecting farms. According to the respondents from Local 301, 62% said that COVID-19 affected their employment on their farm. There were some specific comments from your members, including an increase in demand meant they could have hired more staff, while others indicated that home gardens actually ate into their sales. Others expressed frustration with the delay in arrival of temporary foreign workers and the need to make major bunkhouse upgrades. Others were forced to change to less labor-intensive crops this year and or did not harvest as much due to the difficulty in hiring migrant workers. So one of the big things we're trying to move into and figure out what to do next with this farm labor project is how we can provide better supports. And one of the things that's been very clear to us time and again when we've held these kinds of presentations or had phone conversations with members is the need for more support with the labor required to employ workers. In particular, human resource documents seem to be really lacking on a lot of farms. This time I broke down by all NFUO respondents and just the NFU Local 301. You can see you're about parity, and these are just respondents who employ workers. So the fact that there are a number of people that and farms that don't seem to offer anything beyond the WSIB forms suggests that that there could be some work there. And certainly farm workers have indicated that this is something that attracts them to work on a farm if they have these kinds of documents in hand. So this is something we're definitely looking at moving forward. Because you employ more seasonal agricultural workers in your local, I also decided to break down the question we had on improving the seasonal agricultural worker program. And the blue bar graphs here are all NfU respondents, so all 593, and then the 26 respondents from your local that completed this question. As you can see, many decided, likely because they don't even employ migrant workers, that they didn't want to speak to the types of changes at all that they think are required. But you can see that high on the list is trying to improve access to healthcare and insurance. NEI, I know a lot of farmers have said it's frustrating that they're paying into migrant workers' EI, and those workers don't get to claim or get access to it. There's varying responses, qualitative responses in your local around migrant workers. The quotes here on the side sort of suggest that Canadians don't want to work, so we need migrant workers, said one member from your local. And another said temporary farm workers should be able to move farms and have more protections under the law. Given the fact that your local does employ more migrant workers than others, it certainly would be interesting to have some of your members speak up at the AGM and other venues about your experiences, because we have, and you'll see in a second here, a fair number of farms that are actually looking into taking advantage of the program, and having people who are seasoned and have used it to give advice and suggestions would be very helpful moving forward. Okay, so that you can see that here down at the bottom. So about 10% of those who responded to this question province-wide are looking into actually hiring temporary foreign workers when they hadn't in the past. But you can see here, there are lots of things that people aspire to do in the next 5 years. Taking more breaks and rest is the highest among them. It's probably no surprise to all of you hardworking farmers. But next to that was making ecological or sustainability improvements and a desire to expand operations, scale up, build new infrastructure. So again, these are all things that many would like to do, but have said we're so overburdened with the HR demands and monitoring and managing our workers that getting to some of these things can be extremely difficult. I think that's everything for me. I'm sure you have questions. I could have pulled out a lot more data, but I wanted to just run through stuff briefly for you and give you a bit of a teaser for the AGM on the Friday the 26th. If you haven't filled out the survey, even if you don't employ workers, I encourage you to do so. We've kept it open for a long time to get a large response. That it's been an unprecedented response, actually, of the surveys. The NfU has never had such a response rate. And I want to thank Jillian Murphy and Paige Postma. You might have received a call from them to do the phone survey online, but they have been of tremendous help calling all the members and reaching out to them to talk about farm labor issues. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing now so that we can all see each other again and have a bit of a conversation. But if you want me to pop up another slide again, we can always do that. So any questions or thoughts or points you'd like to make about farm labor issues that came to mind as I went through that presentation? Yeah, Tim.
Dave, you know, it's great that it's a supreme amount of data for you to sift through, and that you've given us an overview. From a higher level, those first comments are Canadians don't want to work on farms. Was that a common thread, or is that just an exclamation mark?
There were a range of comments like that coming both from NfU members, and we spoke to a number of farmers that were not NfU members. So there was a lot of concern with CERB, especially. The fact that CERB was, if you broke it down, pretty much the minimum wage. There were a lot of even the most progressive farmers within the NfU were saying this is maddening. We're charging $1 or $2 more. most of our membership is paying higher than the minimum wage, but if you're only paying $1 or $2 more than what CERB gives you, then it kind of makes sense that people were staying at home and not coming out to work. It really depended on the areas too, right? In Northern Ontario, competing with mine salaries and wages is next to impossible. I mean, you would have to jack up your wages 3 or 4 times fold over the minimum wage in order to get anyone to get on your farm. So people have suggested various different things that we need to do to change these things. Obviously, wages are something we can't really do much about unless we deal with the price of food in general. But generally speaking, people were saying, look, we need to just increase the prestige of farm work, period. We need to get into our schools and promote the idea that farm labor and farm work is important and valuable to our society. And a lot of people have said during COVID too that this has been an unprecedented moment for us to talk about the need for local food, decrease our long supply chains, and understand that this is essential work and needs to be remunerated as such. So I don't know if that answers your question, Tim. It really run the gamut when it came to people's responses, but there was a lot of frustration out there. One of the things I noticed in your local too that came across a lot more than in other locals was the ruralness and the needing to drive to those farms to work. And many people indicated that they thought that young folks were not going to work on farms in your area because of transportation issues.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah.
Even the like housing is an issue too, right? Like they can't find anything locally for us, under $1,000 a month. So that's even if they want to come from somewhere else. That's difficult.
One of the things we're hoping to do on the housing side, Corey, is I think we've identified 1 or 2 locals now, because on-farm housing has been a big issue when we've talked about migrant workers and bunkhouse conditions, but it's also a big issue for domestic workers. And so we have found a couple of locals which I think are willing to push and try to fight to get their municipality to change the bylaws to get some extra housing on their property. And if we can do that in 1 or 2 jurisdictions, then hopefully we can advertise it as a model and maybe even have some training sessions with other locals so that you can push your municipalities and counties to do the same thing. Now, we're not suggesting that we develop farmland, right? But if it means an extra mini home or 2 instead of a trailer on a property, means that we can have more available sources of farm labor, that this is a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, for sure. I think there needs to be, because we looked into it as well. It's a mess, and I don't want to develop the farmland. I just want to have help available, especially in livestock. It's the same for everybody, but livestock is 365 days a year, so it's difficult. We need somebody nearby.
Mm-hmm.
Just building on that idea too, we're constantly hearing about this idea of the urban exodus. So we have bigger and bigger farms with more and more space in between, the inability for young people to drive, but they also can't live locally. So that sounds like the perfect storm. So it adds a lot of support for what Corey brings up and what you're saying, Dave, is to try to get municipalities to think bigger than the town in which their office is situated, I think, what it comes down to sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think any municipality has any sort of reasonable local transportation hub to bypass the need to have things there. No one's going to be driving to the middle of nowhere at 4 a.m. to get the first dairy farmers out. It's not economically viable, I don't think.
I couldn't believe, talking to some of the farm workers closer to the GTA region, that we're driving like hour and a half one-way commutes to, if they were lucky, an $18 an hour job. So again, why weren't they on CERB? They obviously were just so ideologically driven and believe in sustainable food and wanted to learn at the farm work that they were doing this job, because they were making less when you take the gas and insurance off their monthly bill than someone on CERB.
Yeah. We just had our first part-time worker this year. Previous to this year, it was just my wife and I in the operation. And yeah, it was one of our CSA customers from Hamilton who got laid off from her arts industry job due to COVID. At first, she just wanted to barter a few days of work to pay for her veggie box for the year, but she loved it so much, and she was willing to drive an hour from Hamilton every day. What she also did, though, we paid her for most of her work, but she worked some extra hours. Like she was collecting some CERB as well. So she didn't want to just collect the CERB and sit on her butt. So she still came out and worked while she was getting paid CERB. So that was really a perfect example of, she was kind of really motivated. She wanted to be out on a farm and learn about it and be connected to her food rather than sit on her butt, you know?
That's a great example, Adam. Yeah, we certainly heard a lot of stories like that. It was interesting. Charles Levko, who's now at Lakehead University, did research on unpaid interns back in 2018. Certainly, we noticed a massive decline in unpaid internships in the last 2 or 3 years, especially amongst our membership. I think there's been general reluctance to offer unpaid internships. Yet at the same time, farm operators said many that were part of various different intern training programs, they get burned out, the farm operators, and they don't feel like they're getting a good bang for their buck doing that training. So they'll do it for a few years, and then they just want someone in the north said, when I hire someone, I don't care if they're into sustainable agriculture. I want to know if they can walk fast. That's all that matters to me.
I actually came up in the farming world by woofing and interning, and I enjoyed it. I was really glad I had that opportunity. But I think every farm that I worked for, either they're retired or they have paid workers now. They don't rely on woofers or interns the same way. It was, yeah, not great for a lot of reasons.
A number of members in your local talked about how they don't employ migrant workers, but they do something kind of under the radar with labor sharing. And they find out and actually borrow migrant workers on weekends, this sort of thing. It's happening not just in your local, it's certainly happening throughout southwestern Ontario, but this has been another thing that was noticeable in the data, that to make their labor ends meet, people are employing migrant workers on the side on weekends.
It'd be interesting to see, Adam, at some point, maybe, or even Dave, to talk about how woofing works and the good, the bad, and the ugly of this, because we don't see a lot of that stuff happening, but it was more prevalent when we were in our 20s, so like 5 years ago. But it's just not that prevalent now. And also seeing local people traveling to work on, say, tobacco, and the bunkhouses were for them, versus now it's this big fandango of foreign workers, which some people are saying is just too much work and I only need them for this amount of time. So woofing might be in the middle if it's not so ugly as I'm sort of hearing.
It's an interesting thing. We've been holding some great events with Black, Indigenous, people of color on land linking issues and encouraging folks to get involved in farming and support this kind of work. One of the things you notice with the woofing programs and the data that's come out is it's predominantly been fairly affluent white people, folks that in their early 20s that can afford to go to a farm and work for nothing. And so if we want to create more diversity in our food system, which is something I think the NFU is really interested in supporting and pursuing, then we really need to be able to pay people to do the work.
Dave, this was great. Does anyone else have questions along the way? Like, I'm looking forward to your presentation as you unpack this a bit more. Obviously, we don't care about the rest. We just want 301. So thank you so much. But, you know, it's neat to sort of hear how you captured it. So I heard my own voice inside your data, which brings us all in, right? It's the worst when people start talking about the data from your region and you're like, I don't recognize anything this guy's saying. So I think you've done a good job consolidating it into, we have a huge local we think from a perspective of Southern Ontario. It's long and lean and hard to get in between. So I think you captured it reasonably well. And thanks for coming. If others have questions, please dig in. I think flexibility is sort of the word of the future for this kind of thing, and the potential for customers, whomever they are, to stop looking for the cheapest, to start looking for the localist.
I guess the one other thing I wanted to mention to you briefly before I go too is we have been doing a fair bit of work on the side, reaching out to potential new members. And in those conversations, we may on occasion want to reach out to members of your local and put them in touch with you to have conversations about why the NfU is the place for them. There has been NfU National this month only for all the membership types for people who have either been gone for 2 years from the NfU or who have never been NfU members. There's a 50% membership discount for non-FBR. So if you know people in your community that should be associate members of the NfU or are just starting out that don't have an FBR number, but really could benefit from being integrated with the NfU membership, this month's the month. So do keep that in mind. And if you need any more information, just contact me.
And yeah, that's wonderful to hear. And an associate member can be always an associate member, if I understand. They'll never have an FBR number.